So how about if we just closed our eyes, listened to the rhythm of our breath for a few minutes, and just taking in those full, deep inhalations and exhalations. And when we do this, just giving ourselves permission to be fully present here this morning. Accepting that we have no control over what is happening each moment. What the breath allows us to realize is how to go with the flow. No matter what happens in the world, the only thing I can control is how I respond. And being able to tune into my breath and to take several deep breaths and just be present is probably the best thing that we can all do whenever something is challenging. Always try to breathe in the belly, expanding the belly, and then the rib cage. And then bring it up to your heart if you can. And then on the exhale, release anything in the chest and start to pull the belly in. And allow this to be a nice wave, inhaling all the way up. And exhaling all the way down. And allow yourself to be in that natural flow. Again, it's teaching us it's okay. Sometimes life doesn't go as planned. And the only thing we can do is sit back, get grounded into the earth somehow, drop in, plug in through our breath, through our body awareness, and just notice. That's what this whole situation is just teaching us, lesson upon lesson upon lesson, about acceptance, about patience, about really going in to determine what's the most important things in our life, and to release the things that are just not important. So as you're breathing, and I want you to keep your eyes closed and just continue to breathe into your body, I wanted to read a little bit from the Yoga Sutras this morning, the philosophies on yoga, the yogic path. And so you close your eyes and you just breathe and just kind of take in some of these words, this ancient wisdom. This morning I opened to the second book, Book 2 of the Yoga Sutras, wanted to be discussed. So Book 2 in the Yoga Sutras is about the practice. And the first sutra says, accepting tapa, purification, study of spiritual books, and surrender to the Supreme Being constitute yoga in practice. So tapas means to burn and to create. That's the purification process. This internal fire. Studying of spiritual texts or spiritual books. So we're looking at the Yoga Sutras this morning, but you can take that as any spiritual book. And surrender to the Supreme Being, God, consciousness, universal consciousness, the light, whatever you constitute as the supreme being, your higher power, surrender. So that can feel a little scary, surrendering. So if you allow yourself to breathe into that feeling, what does surrender feel like? You actually feel that movement away from fear and into an experience of love. When we accept that there is something bigger out there, the light, God, Christ consciousness, goddess, whatever you're referring to, this energy, this spiritual practice, there is a great feeling of support, interconnectedness. So allow yourself to breathe through any feelings of fear over that word surrender. And allow yourself to just be in your breath, in this moment, surrendering, right? Surrendering. What is your higher power? What is the God that you believe in? That is the experience of light. And how can you surrender to that even more? How can you let go? That is the first sutra of book 1. Or I'm sorry, book 2. The second sutra says samadhi. Samadhi is that ultimate place in yoga. Some people think of it as the goal, but it's the accumulation of the practices, the samadhi. And it says contemplation, to help us minimize obstacles and obtain samadhi. That's why we do this. To help us minimize obstacles and attain this bliss, this blissful place. That's why we practice yoga. So I hope you're still doing that yoga breathing. And if you're just joining us now, we're breathing, allowing the belly to expand, the rib cage to expand, the chest to expand, all in an inhale. And then you're exhaling down and squeezing the belly back. That's the practice this morning. So what are these obstacles in the way of achieving this union, this bliss, this transcendent experience? Ignorance, egoism, attachment, hatred, and clinging to bodily life are the 5 obstacles. Ignorance, egoism, attachment, hatred, and clinging to life, to the body, are the 5 attachments. So what is ignorance? He goes on to say in Sutra 5, ignorance is regarding the impermanent as permanent, the impure as pure, the painful as pleasant, and the non-self as self. Ignorance is regarding the impermanent as permanent. Another fearful thing to consider as you're breathing and just feeling is that all of this body, the life that I'm having right now in this earthly plane, this is impermanent. Our mortality is 100%. And when I allow myself to become attached to this feeling that that is permanent, that is incorrect. So how does that feel when we're breathing this morning? We're breathing into that feeling that our life is impermanent. I feel also not just life, but each moment, right? So right now we're experiencing a collective situation. This too is impermanent. It's not always going to be this way. We are in the middle of a big change of energy. There's an opportunity for us to move through this together, to be in a much better place than we were before. There's an opportunity for you to stay in the same place you've been. Everything is impermanent though. This is going to shift. So how does it feel when you're breathing into that this is impermanent? The situation, this virus, the quarantine, all of it, everything that's come of it is impermanent. What about ego? Egoism is the identification, as it were, of the power of the seer, Purusha, with that of the instrument of seeing, body-mind. So he says ego is the reflection of the true self on the mind. So ego is not our true self. It's a reflection. It's what the mind kind of filters. Attachment is that which follows identification with pleasurable experiences. So as we're breathing into the thought of attachment, the clinging to what used to be, and for many of us, allowing ourselves to kind of think of the past in a completely good light when there were lots of things that didn't work the way they were. Like romanticizing the past. So attachment is that which follows identification with pleasurable experiences. So as we're breathing into this morning, we're breathing into identification with our attachments. When we feel something outside of us feels pleasurable, and we want to experience that again and again, that is an obstacle in the yogic path. Aversion is that which follows identification with painful experiences. So whether you are feeling attachment or aversion as these obstacles, remember, everything is impermanent. We're seeing things probably through our mind, through our ego's perceptions, so there's a little bit of cloudiness on what is the true nature. Breathe into that attachment and aversion. So even having an aversion to quarantine or whatever the situations are right now is a problem. We want to not be attached to something or having extreme aversion to it. We want to accept that we're in this breath, we're in this wave. Things are changing all the time. The final obstacle is clinging to life. So we already talked about that a little bit. In my personal belief in reincarnation, gives me a feeling of that this spiritual part of me will live on after this life, after this body. Whether I choose to come back right away or I wait, I know it's not over. And my attachments to any particular things on this earthly plane may be difficult. That's part of the human experience. So I'm allowing myself to just feel those things as part of being human, but understanding on another level that everything is impermanent and that things are changing all the time. And eventually, my spirit's going to move on to another place, but it's not the end. And so that clinging to the body, there's a feeling of release there with acceptance of the cycle of life and death and rebirth. If that's not your personal feelings, then you have to find something that reconciles that for you. Otherwise, the practice of yoga and that obstacle will always be there for you. So these are very difficult. No one says it's easy. No one says the time we're living in right now is easy. But I do truly believe that the practice of yoga, not just the physical practices, but these philosophies can really help us to understand and help us move more gracefully through the challenges that we have at hand, to determine what's truly important at this time and in our life. And what do we want to create? What is the new world we want to create together? Some of us have to make that happen by being an activist, by getting involved, by stepping up, by standing up for things that aren't right or just, by being part of the movement that brings in the type of world we want to have. Some of us will be support systems for many of those people that are going to be out there making these positive changes in our world. Some of us will be meditating heavily meditated about these experiences. And that is also the next part of the Yoga Sutras. The next couple of sutras are about dhyana, this active meditative state. And there's so much more. I want to leave you with the lesson this morning on those obstacles, those kleshas. Again, ignorance, egoism, attachment, hatred and clinging to the body. Maybe your yoga practice today isn't about heavy, postures where you're squeezing and twisting and bending. And maybe your yoga practice today is contemplation, is meditation on these kleshas, these obstacles in our way of achieving true bliss and enlightenment. Many, many times for me, the yoga practice has not been about rolling out my mat. It has been about contemplating these philosophies, bringing them into my life, and through much meditation, contemplation, determining, or allowing myself, really not determining, that's more of a mindset, but allowing myself to find a place of peace with them, acceptance with them. So it's a beautiful day outside again today, and maybe you can find a little spot in the sun to just breathe and meditate on maybe just one of the kleshas, maybe just egoism, maybe you just think about or meditate on your ego. What is the part of you that I, me, my, that keeps you feeling as a separate being from the oneness, that puts that cloudiness, that veil in front of what is the truth? Maybe that's your practice today. Ignorance is a great one. What is true? What do we identify as true? How do we believe that that's true? Maybe that's our meditation today. Maybe that's our practice. Ignorance. Ignorance to what our true nature is. Maybe your practice is on attachment today. The things that you find yourself being attached to. And it's difficult. We love what we love. We love, in many ways, the lives that we made. The people that were in them. But everything is impermanent. The practice could be on letting go of attachments today. P.S. One of the most difficult yoga practices you will try. On the other side of that is the aversion. Maybe your practice is on accepting and remembering cycles, impermanence. Even the painful situation will not last. Never has, never will. Nothing about that's changed. Not even the situation we find ourselves in. Impermanent. You could choose to have your practice about the clinging to the body of life. And in your contemplation, determining what is my real fear about leaving my body, leaving this life. Will I miss it? Yeah. Will I miss the people or the things? Or is it part of my next stage of my journey? Will I still be with them in some way? Are there ways for us to stay connected as energetic beings and continue to support each other even when I'm not in my body? So, the kleshas, they keep us locked in a state of fear. So I know this probably wasn't the yoga practice you wanted this morning. Maybe you wanted to bend and stretch, and you can certainly bend and stretch. You know enough to do that on your own. But maybe this is the yoga practice you needed this morning. Contemplation on these obstacles that keep us from attaining true bliss. bliss, enlightenment, nirvana, samadhi. It doesn't matter the name you call it. Garden of Eden. All of that is accessible to us, but we have to go through these channels, these yogic teachings. And if you're not a practitioner of yoga, then what in your spiritual tradition gives you the practice, the contemplation? So go ahead and bring your hands to your heart. If you're still here with me this morning, or if you're just joining in and listening, bring your hands into a prayer pose. The thumbs press against your breastbone, your sternum, very actively. The fingertips touch. I always like to tell people there's a little space in between. So you don't smash your palms together, but you leave a little space. And what that space to me always signifies is allowing myself the space to realize that I don't know everything, that there's still so much more to understand about life, and to be open to receive the teachings and the information as I'm ready to receive them. As we bow our head and conclude the yoga practice for this morning, we'll end with a prayer for continued health and happiness to all beings on the planet. May we continue to heal, find the light, raise our vibrations, and come to allow every action and reaction to be that of peace and harmony as we come into working together to create the world that we really want to have. Let us put aside our differences this time and realize that we're all wanting the same thing. At the end of the day, the goal is the same: happiness, peace, harmony. I'm going to chant the mantra Om 3 times, and you're welcome to chant with me. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The divine light in me bows to the divine light in each of you. Namaste.